The Seattle Mariners kicked off their homestand against the Athletics, taking the series 2-1. We're going to talk about that, break down what happened in this series, and then we're going to talk about the Mariners relievers, who was injured, including Matt Brash and Gregory Santos, when they're expected to be back. We're then going to talk about the Mariners' top prospects in the top 100 by MLB Pipeline, and we're going to finish it all up by talking about the Kansas City Royals series coming up starting on Monday. Thank you guys so much for watching episode 86 of the Hit It Here podcast, Joe Lacey's mom's podcast. I don't know if you want me to dox your mom, Joe, but Joe Lacey's mom's podcast, lovely lady. And I'm here with Joe, who is the son of Joe Lacey's mom. Joe, how are you?
I'm good. I'm a little thrown off. I was just expecting you to say her name, truthfully. Like, she's a member, she's in the members list. Like, people can see that, but it is what it is.
I don't know if I should dox her, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we're doxing ourselves every single time we record one of these. But regardless, Colton, an upcoming series continuing this homestand. It's a preview of the ALCS when it comes down to it. Like, we're just, putting pen to paper here. We're making the claim now. A big series coming up for the Mariners against your World Series champs, Kansas City Royals. Colton, place your bets now. I'm locking in ALCS, Mariners, Royals. I would pick the Mariners. I know you'd pick the Royals, but guys, if you wanted to place a bet on that, do it with Bet Online. Thank you to Bet Online for being the sponsor for the Hit It Here podcast. Bet Online is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoffs. All the latest stats, news, and scores will be available to you to follow your favorite teams on Bet Online. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Colton, this series was a weird one between the A's and the Mariners. The first game, it felt like the Mariners were unstoppable. 8-1 was the final score line. And coming out of a Twins series where I think the wind kind of got knocked out of the Mariners' sails a little bit. Coming off 6 consecutive series wins, you go into Minnesota, you're like, yeah, oh yeah. And then they kind of, pushed us to the dirt and kicked us around a little bit. You come home, you drop 8 on the Athletics head, a team that's playing better baseball than I think anybody would have expected. Colton, the vibes after game 1 were actually, they're really, really good.
Were they?
Were they not?
I mean, with the Brian Wu stuff, like, there was definitely cause for concern in that game. In terms of the offensive production, yes, the vibes were good.
I guess.
We saw Luke Raley absolutely demolish a baseball to left field. The next day, I was able to we had like the season ticket holder like photo day thing, and I asked him straight, I'm like, listen, bro, how sure were you that was getting out? And he goes, well, I knew I hit it hard enough. I just didn't know if I hit it high enough. And he goes, apparently I didn't. So
he's just a regular bro. He just sounds like a regular bro.
Regular bro. But we did see Cal Raw. Was it that game? No, Cal hit the home run in the game too.
Yes.
Left-handed Cal, by the way. No, but yeah, Brian Wu coming out of that game was a little bit scary. Turns out we listened to it after the game that it was just tightness for Brian Wu. And me with my insider info, Joe. I talked to him the next day as well at the photo day, and I was like, hey man, how you feeling? He's like, I feel fine, I'm ready to go. So
that's good.
I got the insider scoop from Mr. Wu himself, Joe.
That's why I felt the vibes were good, just because after the game, Scott said like, yeah, it was just precautionary thing. Like it was, nothing crazy. Expected him to make his next start. I think that's maybe where my head went to with the vibes being high, because you drop 8, you get Brian Wu back. Yes, it was, I guess, a little bit shorter than you expected, but he still went out there, threw 4 1/3. He sat for a while, which is is what is being put as the blame for why his velo went down to 88 on a fastball. But
so wild, dude.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like I didn't think about it when it happened, and then you rewatch the sequence and it's so obvious. And then Cal immediately was like, he clocked it like right away. And so
Cal, I feel like Cal is like he's good at that. Like there are some catchers that probably wouldn't notice that, but Cal is so in tune with each guy that's throwing on the mound.
Mm-hmm.
Like he saw it right away. And like it was just so like good for Cal. I mean, I'm sure Wu was like, come on, man. Like let me stay out here and finish this inning or whatever. But good for Cal, especially a guy coming back off the injured list. A big just kind of showing some leadership there from Cal Raleigh.
Yeah, and I can't not mention Dylan Moore if we're talking about game one. 5 ribbies. Dude was going off 3 for 4, a homer. Shout out Dylan Moore. He's been amazing in JP Crawford's absence. But Colton, we can't talk about this series as a whole without going to the awful, awful balanced vibes of the second game. We went 8-1 up in the first game, and the Athletics said Uno reverse. We're going 8-1 back right onto you guys.
Conveniently the game that I was at.
Yeah, it was a lovely game for you to go attend. Cal Raleigh, the sole run scorer, a homer off of Joey Estes. What was going wrong with the Mariners in this game?
I mean, offensively, Joey Estes, obviously a guy they probably haven't seen that much. I mean, Estes is a guy who's like number 11, I think, on the Athletics prospect list. He came in there and he just dominated the Mariners. I mean, frankly, the Mariners didn't know what to do with Joey Estes. They didn't. And we can't fault the pitching at all. Bryce Miller, 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 earned, 2 walks, 9 Ks. He gave the Mariners a chance to run away with this thing early in the game, and they just didn't do it. And then it came down to Ryan Stanek, Gabe Spire, and Bazardo, who ended up giving up 6 runs total in 3 innings. Another rough game for Gabe Spire where he ends up walking 2, Joe. This is something that's become kind of a trend for Gabe recently, and I don't necessarily know what it is, but obviously the Mariners bullpen, and we'll talk about it here in just a little bit, has taken some hits recently, and somebody like Gabe, who was so spot on for them last year, how he's been struggling as well. It is rough to watch, this bullpen right now. But for the Mariners, they had a total of 3 hits. 1 from Rojas, obviously the home run from Cal, and 1 from Jorge Polanco. But otherwise, the Mariners were blanked the rest of this game. Offensively, just an ugly, ugly game for the Mariners, and eventually they gave it up to the Athletics in that 8th inning.
Yeah, this one, there's some specific plays that stand out where Julio hits a line drive right back up and Joey Estes gets a glove on it. He's out. Could have been a single, could have started something else, get a guy on, maybe interrupt Joey Estes' flow, whatever. Garver, hard line out to third. I think it was Nevin playing third in that game. Makes a nice jumping catch. I can't remember if it was who hit a line drive at Tyler Soderstrom over at first, and that made a nice leaping grab as well. So there are a couple and Lawrence Butler. Lawrence Butler made a great play out in right field on Julio Rodriguez as well. So those are 4 hits that could have increased this Mariners hit total from 3 to 7. Would they have warranted or garnered run scoring opportunities? Maybe. Never a guarantee, but also I don't know if it's enough to quantify 8 runs or give the Mariners a chance here when Gabe unfortunately doesn't have his best stuff again. And it's been like 2 or 3 outings in a row for Gabe where it hasn't been particularly sharp, where previous to that, he'd been amazing. So hopefully he's just getting them all out in one big spell. That's my copium, and I'll admit that it's copium. You need Gabe to be better. But in the final game, Colton, if you're ready to move on.
Yeah, let me just mention Gabe's over his last 7 games. So last 7 games, 6 innings pitched. He's given up 4 hits, 4 earned. He's walked 6 and only struck out 8 in that time frame. For a guy last year who, let's see, in 2023, Gabe Spire walked a total. Joe, are you ready for this?
2 batters.
Gabe Spire. What?
Is it 2 batters?
No, he walked a total of 11 hitters.
Oh.
In 2023, he's walked 6 in his last 7 games. He's already at 8 for the year.
He's gonna need to lock down.
He is gonna need to lock it down. I mean, Gabe has still been good. At the beginning of this year, he was obviously one of the best pitchers in that bullpen. But right now, it's just a struggle for him. In game 2, we saw Ryan Stanek come in a spot where we probably wouldn't normally see him in game 2, because another guy who's maybe been struggling a little bit. And moving on now to game 3, I think that we've seen some interesting things out of this Mariners bullpen, Joe. But in the end, the Mariners were able to walk away with a W.
The bullpen in game 3, Colton, it just wasn't as necessary to be as locked down because the Mariners offense got it going early. 4 runs in the second inning, a big home run from Julio. There's some other run scoring things that happened in the inning. I think Dylan Moore was it a double or just a single? I can't remember off the top of my head.
How's it work? So
I was watching Rocket League at that point, truthfully.
okay,
Keep my priorities
you
straight.
have a job to do. All
And
right.
G2 won, and that's all that matters. We caught 2 dubs today for me in my world. But beyond the second inning, it was slow going for a bit there, and 5-0. Luis Castillo seems like he's cruising. He does his job today. 6 innings, 7 hits, 2 earned, 2 solo home runs. When you've got 5, eventually 6 runs as Castillo exits the game, those 2 solo shots really aren't doing a whole lot for you. Like, you're not super worried about it. He strikes out 8. The Mariners offense just as a whole was working, I think, in cohesion today. Like, Garver had a homer, Sebi Savala had a home run late in this game as well, and kind of an insurance run. The Athletics, they're kind of scrappy. Abraham Toro hit a home run while TJ is in attendance, known Abraham Toro, denier. TJ of the Marine Layer podcast was there in attendance. Well, that's tough goings for him. The thing about this game is the only guy that really had you worried was Cody Bolton. And I'm not super worried if Cody Bolton's given up an earned run or two or here or there, because like he's the 7th arm out of the pen. Eventually, like when we get Santos back, he might even be gone. Like, it's just a situation like I'm not super worried. The spot that he gets put into there, yeah, the game gets a bit closer. You go 8-4. You end up using Munoz in the 9th to close it out. I'm okay with Munoz getting work in there. Sure, he might be down for game 1 against the Royals, but he only threw 9 pitches. So Munoz, he might even be good to go for Monday's game. But this final game, getting a win, you take over first place in the AL West because the Rangers got swept by the Rockies in Colorado. Omega lol.
Yikes.
Yikers, guys. The Mariners, they're in an okay spot right now. At 22-19, Julio's been hitting the ball exponentially harder than I'd say the entire month of April in the last 4 games in May that he's played. Like, bro, it seems like he's starting to heat up. It seems like the power stroke might be coming there. Mitch Garver had a good game. Like, there's guys that are getting on the right track.
Yeah, you mentioned Julio. He's been hitting the ball a lot harder. I think in terms of what we've seen out of Julio in the past few games, game 2, it didn't result in anything, but he hit the ball over 100 miles an hour 3 times. And in game 3, same thing. And it resulted in a home run and a double, and I think like a line out or a ground out or something like that. The biggest thing for Julio, we know he's going to hit the ball hard. He's hitting the ball in the air. And we saw that, of course, the home run and the double. And while it's not necessarily the pull power that we were used to seeing with Julio, he's still hitting the ball in the air, and he can hit a ball out to anywhere in the stadium. He can. Julio is strong enough to do that. It's just getting the ball in the air that's the big thing. We talked about Dylan Moore. You mentioned it a little bit earlier on, talking about this series. He has been, I mean, if I'm being honest with you, he has been a godsend for this team right now. With losing JP Crawford, you're like, oh my God, there's a black hole in this lineup now. I mean, not that JP has been great this year.
Yeah.
But putting Dylan Moore in there and having him be a guy who can just basically go out there and he was hitting leadoff in game 3. He had 5 RBIs in the first game. Dylan Moore has been one of those guys that just kind of buckled down, and he did the job he needed to do, and he has looked absolutely incredible out there. When JP comes back, which allegedly will be sometime during this homestand, obviously Leo Rivas probably gets sent back down. That's probably the move. It'll free Dylan Moore up to go out and maybe go play left field or something like that on days where they want to have Rayleigh out of the lineup or something like that. But again, Rayleigh's been playing well too. So Dylan Moore's a guy who I still think should see probably 3-4 starts a week at least. Talking about this kind of the injuries on this team right now, Joe, we got a few updates on some of the relievers for the Mariners. Of course, Taylor Saucedo, who went down with his knee hyperextension. We got some news on Matt Brash, and we got some news on Gregory Santos. Joe, break it all down for us.
You want the good news or the bad news?
I personally like the bad news first.
Great.
I like to end on a high note.
Matt Brash will not pitch for the Seattle Mariners for at least a calendar year. Tommy John should have had it 2 months ago, realistically. If we're being, I don't want to say blunt, because it's not necessarily a blunt thing to say, but cut out the middleman. If you it's a setback that happens. Now he's getting Tommy John later than he could have. It's unfortunate. He wasn't going to pitch regardless in 2024. Now it's going to be later in 2025. Hopefully, it was a successful surgery overall. Hopefully, his recovery time is the shortest that it can be, and that Matt Brash is back in full strength next summer. But don't even think about Matt Brash and his beautiful slider and his perfect nose. Just don't think about it. All right, don't even worry about it because he doesn't concern the 2024 Seattle Mariners. A guy that was supposed to be part of the three-headed monster with Brash, Gregory Santos, got news that there's been some hiccups in the ramp-up program for him in terms of his throwing program. Looking like post-All-Star break, end of July, maybe August for Santos. It's not great. I think given how we felt, like what we knew about it in spring up until this point, it felt like that was inevitable in a way. Like we weren't going to see Santos really until the summer, and now it's confirmed like probably not even until August or like the end of July. But the silver lining here, Colton, is that Saucedo's going to face like the minimum as far as being out. There's no structural damage. Saucedo's doing all right. He was out there. I think he was out there during the media day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a chance to talk to him?
I did not actually. He was kind of going the other direction, but he was walking without help, a little bit of a limp, but he was walking without like he didn't need any like crutches or anything like that. So,
well, that's good because he'll be back soon enough. And the Mariners bullpen, Bizardo hasn't looked great. Like Kirby Steed, I think has looked fine in his appearances, but you'd probably still rather have Sauce. Hopefully, once he's back out there, there aren't any other setbacks beyond that. But like, what? End of May? Maybe like middle May? No, we're in the middle of May.
yep.
Middle to like middle of May? Like the evening of May.
Just shut up.
Not the night of May, like the evening of May.
You're still like, listen. All right, Taylor Saucedo's gonna be back hopefully sometime this month, and that's gonna be a big boost for his bullpen because we talked about Cody Bolton and how he hasn't been great lately. And you said he's like the seventh guy out of the bullpen, but not right now. He's not. Like in terms of how this pen is set up at the moment, obviously you have Munoz and Stanek at the back end, but Stanek hasn't looked great, Spire hasn't looked great, and then we talk about Bolton not looking good, Bizardo not looking good. Like the members of this bullpen, it's a struggle right now. It really is. And losing Brash for the year and now not getting Santos back until July, the Mariners may want to go out there and look at some relievers around the league. Whether that be like we know the Marlins are selling already. Like Tanner Scott. Maybe you want to go out and get Tanner Scott from the Marlins or something like that. Maybe you want to go look at Michael Kopech from the White Sox and say, hey, go throw 100 at the back end of our bullpen and don't walk people, please. Thanks. Cool. Thank you. Bye.
Please and thank you.
Like there are options out there for relievers, and thankfully relievers are when it comes to availability, relievers are generally the most available. And we also know that the Mariners can churn these guys out. The designating of assignment of Tyson Miller.
Very strange.
Very strange. Humongously strange move for me. Because I think he was fine when he was here. And like I personally would rather see Tyson Miller in this bullpen right now than Cody Bolton.
I agree.
Would. Like a very strange move by the Mariners front office in that scenario. But in terms of this bullpen, yeah, I think the Mariners, it's time for them. They need to go out and try to make a move early. Because adding another guy to this bullpen would probably be a huge boost. Like, again, the guys that are in the bullpen right now can get it done. They can. They've proven that. But it's not necessarily going to be pretty. I mean, they're not all AJ Minter. You know what I mean? Just blowing every possible save opportunity he ever gets in the lifetime of his contract with the Atlanta Braves. No, they're not that bad. But I think that the Mariners, it would probably be good for them to go out and maybe just add a guy somewhere. Because, yes, the guys from the pile, there are guys in the pile currently. But you've kind of burned through some of them. Tyson Miller was one of those guys. Obviously, you already have Kirby Snead, and you have Cody Bolton up right now. Like guys from the pile are kind of going. They're kind of getting tossed aside now. As you start to realize, kind of who fits into this bullpen. So the Mariners might want to go out there and yes, they have the idea of this 3 to possibly even 4-headed dragon at the end of the bullpen when you added Ryan Stanek. Like that was going to be like the best bullpen in baseball. All of a sudden, that doesn't exist anymore. You have Munoz, you have Stanek, who hasn't been all that great. He's been fine, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hope to get Santos back by after the All-Star break. Right now, you have this like little two-headed like snake that has like a few little stumps next to it, and it's like looking around like, hey, what happened to my other heads, man?
Mm-hmm.
You know, but they burned the Hydra head, Joe. Greek mythology, baby. They took fire to it.
Is that what you're supposed to do?
Yeah. Because if you got to burn the stunt anyway. Moving on now, Joseph, to the new MLB Pipeline Top 100. Break down for me how many Mariners we have in the Top 100 and where they're at.
So guys made a little bit of movement. Cole Young sitting at 28. He's the top of the list. He's still the Mariners' top prospect. And right behind him, his buddy, Harry Ford, sitting at 29. They're both in Arkansas. They're doing all right. Harry Ford went on a heater, had like 12-game hit streak. I don't know if it went beyond 12. He's been a little bit better offensively than Cole Young. Cole Young's hitting like 230 right now in Arkansas. Harry Ford has brought his average up to 250. And a controversial opinion there is that the third guy, Colt Emerson, is still behind Cole Young and Harry Ford as far as prospect rankings are concerned. Emerson did jump up about 30 spots from 87 to 51, which is exciting. He's close to cracking the top 50, but he can continue to rise up that list as the season goes on because Colt Emerson hype is real. But a guy that's got palpable hype, palpable everything, the ultimate swag, number 85 in the top 100, new addition, your guy, Colton, Lazaro Montes, tearing it up in Modesto, 308, 417, 533 slug with a 950 OPS so far, 6 homers. He's almost walked just as many strikeouts, 23 strikeouts to 21 walks. Lazaro Montes deserved a top 100 nod, I think, preseason. He's here now.
Laz has been incredible so far down there in Modesto. I honestly expect him to get moved up sooner rather than later because he has succeeded at every level in the minor leagues. I think that Lazaro Montes is going to be in Seattle next year?
What?
Maybe at the end.
What?
You know what I mean? You don't think so?
No.
You don't love that?
I mean, if he's hitting 300 in Arkansas next year, maybe.
Look me in the eyes right now, Joseph. Are you looking?
I'm looking.
All right. If he gets moved up to Arkansas within the next month,
no shot.
You don't think so?
Arkansas, he's just gonna skip Everett.
Who needs it?
We'll see. A guy, Gabby, who's one spot below Lazaro Montes now in the top 100. Gabby was crushing in Modesto, went to Everett, and slowed down. I'm not saying Lazaro's going to slow down, but like Arkansas in a month. You think...
Yeah, it's a pretty big jump.
It's a huge jump.
Let's say he ends the year in Arkansas, right?
Okay, reasonable. I can accept that.
All right, starts next season, crushing it at Arkansas. You don't think there's a chance that he's in the big leagues by the end of the year?
It will take him to really expedite his growth.
I just want to see Lazaro Montes, man. I know it's not reasonable.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
That's
I'm selfish. I'm selfish. I want to see him and Julio together. I think the two of them, their personalities, it's going to be so much fun.
Such good vibes.
Like, you think that Julio has a good personality, like in terms of just vibing all the time? Lazaro Montes is like the ultimate vibe guy. He really is. But I think that the Mariners, they have 4 players in the top 100 prospects. It just goes to show how good this farm system actually is, because we know that the Mariners farm system hasn't been ranked in like the top 10 recently because it's had so many graduations with obviously like George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, Julio, etc., blah, blah, blah. But this farm system is very much built from the bottom up. And I think that as these guys start to get a little bit older, and we're starting to see it. We're starting to see, Harry Ford get to Double-A and whatnot, and Cole Young, etc. And Colt Emerson's been really good. Lazaro's been really good, especially the top 10 of this Mariners farm system. We're seeing them as they get to a little bit higher up in the minor leagues. People are starting to take notice, and that this farm system is going to be probably ranked one of the best in baseball as early as the beginning of next season. I think that it'll probably be top 10, maybe even top 5 as early as next season. Maybe I'm biased.
Yeah.
Maybe. Just maybe.
Just a tad.
I mean, Lazaro Montes alone should make them number 1.
Number one in your
But
heart.
yeah, that's right. But I think that overall, this just goes to show how good the Mariners are at this. The Mariners have been very good about drafting and developing these players. I mean, a lot of the best players on the Mariners team right now were drafted by this team and developed by this team. Cal Raleigh, Julio, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby. Like, and then of course Bryce Miller. Can't forget about Bryce Miller, Brian Wu. These guys were all drafted by the Mariners, developed by the Mariners over the past couple of years. And this team's good at this. Like, yeah, the hitters haven't necessarily come along, but we've seen it with Cal. We've seen it with Julio. The pitchers are obviously, there's a reason why the Mariners have one of the best rotations in baseball, and 4 of the 5 pitchers are homegrown. We know the Mariners are good at this on the pitching side of things. And on the offensive side of things, it's worked out sometime with Julio again and Cal. Now we're starting to see hopefully Cole Young, Lazaro Montes, Colt Emerson, Harry Ford, etc. as like the kind of the next wave of these guys. Putting it all together, and the Mariners could have a very, very formidable team here in the next couple of years.
Would you say formidable enough to take on the World Series bound Kansas City Royals, Colton?
Easily.
Easily.
Listen, I am still of the mindset the Royals are going to be very good this year, and they have been. But this series doesn't matter. They're going down, Joseph.
Wow. You're going against your gut here, it seems like.
But in game 1,
yeah,
Brady Singer's going to strike out 12. It doesn't matter. George Kirby's going to strike out like 6.
Okay.
But Brady Singer's going to strike out like 12. But the Mariners are still going to win this game, Joseph. They are.
What's the recipe for success in game 1 against Kansas City?
String hits together against Brady Singer. Let's talk about some of the slash lines here against Brady Singer. Not everybody on this team has faced him so far. Ty France faced him in 12 at-bats. He is hitting 167.
Nice.
The guy who's faced Brady Singer the most is Jorge Polanco. In 25 at-bats, he's hit 2 home runs. He's hitting 280. Cal Raleigh has 11 at-bats versus him with 1 home run, hitting 273. Julio's hitting 333 versus Brady Singer. And in 10 at-bats, Josh Rojas is hitting 100 versus Brady Singer here. We move on now to the Royals. And again, George hasn't been around that long, so obviously the numbers are a little bit lower here. I think we have 500. Freddie Furman hitting 500.
Nice.
You got, let's see, the most at bats versus George here is 6 at bats, and that's Adam Frazier, who's hitting 167. Overall, though, Bobby Witt Jr. is hitting 667 versus George, and so he's 2 for 3 against George. Again, not a whole lot of numbers versus George Kirby here, but the numbers that are on my screen right now, the Royals have hit pretty well against it because they're a scrappy team. They make a lot of contact in the zone. We know that George is in the zone quite often. The Royals last year were a pain in the booty for the Mariners. Hopefully that is not the case in 2024, Joe.
Yeah, it was one of the most frustrating series, I think, at the end of last year to watch, just because it was a Royals team that was bad last year, and they put the Mariners to the test. A 25-17 Royals team so far this year. Been one of the better teams in baseball, and it's been a pretty surprising turn of events for them, I would say. Yes, there are some people that were high on them, but I don't know if the idea was that their pitching would come around so quickly. Yes, the signings of Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha have definitely improved their pitching staff pretty soundly. James MacArthur's been great for them in the back end of the bullpen. My big concern for them at the beginning of the year, Colton, when we were talking about how the Royals were going to do when we did our big MLB predictions, was who was going to be the guys around Bobby Witt Jr. Yes, Bobby Witt Jr. is probably having a top 3 MVP season as it stands right now for the American League. The Royals as a team are the same WRC plus as the Seattle Mariners. 96 on the year. The Mariners are 96 as well. They've got, I don't want to say a similar batting average because the Royals are 20 points ahead, but a similar on-base percentage, but the Mariners are 30 points behind in slugging. The big difference, the Royals don't strike out. They are striking out at 18.5% of the time. That is good for second best in the league behind the Houston Astros. You know what team is leading the league in strikeouts, Colton? The Seattle Mariners. And albeit strikeouts don't necessarily matter a ton, it's when you can hide them. Like in game 1 against the Athletics, they struck out, I think, 12 or 13 times, dropped 8 runs. In the second game, they only struck out 7 times, dropped 1 run. Like, it's not the end all be all, but it can impact your team negatively if you're not doing anything with the opportunities that you're given. The pitching is, something that we talk about a lot as far as going in the favor for the Mariners. The Royals pitching has been good, comparable to the Mariners in 2024. A 3.46 ERA for the Royals, a 3.36 ERA for the Mariners. Similar levels of Fangraphs WAR. So this, on paper, this matchup is pretty even, in my opinion, as far as how a lot of the stats have kind of gone so far this year. Brady Singer versus George Kirby should be a good matchup in game 1. I'm looking to game 2 as the most favorable matchup, though, with Michael Wacha taking the bump against Logan Gilbert. Logan Gilbert did not have a great start in Minnesota. Back home, back in T-Mobile, against Michael Wacha, who's been mid, to say the least. A 5.15 ERA for the Royals so far. He struck out 37 batters. He's not going above and beyond like I would say Seth Lugo has, Colton. Helped me beat you in fantasy this week. Colton, game 2, I'm looking for the Mariners to really take advantage in that pitching matchup specifically.
I expect Logan to have a big bounce back game. I mean, it was just so uncharacteristic of him in that last game versus the Twins. We really haven't seen that version of Logan in quite a long time. Even like, I can't think of a time in all of last year where we saw something like that.
I think there was one Yankee start early on where like he just got shelled and like a bad pitch to Volpe. He hit out into the bullpen and like Judge tagged him. Like that's the one that like sticks in my mind from last year. Because I agree, it's been a long time and it's very inconsistent with Logan having starts like that.
And with Michael Wacha, like the Paul Rudd lookalike, there is a lot of tape on him. I mean, he's been around for quite a long time. Like you said, a 5.15 ERA. In terms of the Mariners offense, most at-bats versus Michael Wacha, Tyler Lawrence, France. And he is hitting 600 in 15 at-bats versus Michael Wacha. Second most is Jorge Polanco. He's hitting 210 at-bats. Julio has 8 ABs hitting 250. Only Julio and Jorge Polanco have home runs in this lineup in their career versus Michael Wacha. In terms of against Logan Gilbert, not many at-bats here. The most at-bats on the team for the Royals is Salvador Perez, which makes sense. He's hitting 308 with 2 home runs and 7 ribbies and 13 ABs versus Logan Gilbert. So, again, we talk about this Royals team, Joe, and you mentioned, how their numbers are very comparable. But before the season, you look at the players on each of these teams, you say the Mariners should win this by a landslide.
Correct.
But somehow, some way, the Royals they're scrappy. They find a way, and I like the moves that they made in the offseason. They added Will Smith, so they're going to the World Series. Offensively, the fact the Royals are basically out/lining the Mariners is crazy to me. Because they have Bobby Witt, they have Salvador Perez. Yup.
That's kind of where it stops.
That's kind of where it stops. Whereas the Mariners, they have all these guys who should, on paper, be putting up great years for this team. And we know the struggles of Mitch Garver, Jorge Polanco, Julio, etc. But you look at the players on the Royals, and the Mariners the Mariners clear in terms of just names. But again, here we find ourselves. The Royals have the better record again, playing in the NL Central, but the AL Central, but the AL Central has been really good this year. And we look at where this series is going. The Mariners are gonna have to rely on their pitching staff. Yes, they did score 17 runs in the Athletics series.
Correct.
No shot at the Athletics here because they've been great this year. But again, it's Athletics pitching.
The pitching is a big discrepancy between the Athletics and the Royals. Like it's night and day what I think the Mariners are going to be tasked up against, because the Royals have just had more success. And sure, it's success that hasn't necessarily been super consistent in previous years. Like a guy that is starting in game 3 opposite Brian Wu, a guy that also just came off the injured list, Alec Marsh, last year had a 5.69 ERA, was not a great pitcher by many statistical categories. So far this year, he's put up a 2.5 ERA. Like, bro's actually pitching really, really good.
For the Mariners, the person with the most at-bats versus Alec Marsh is Julio with 6 at-bats. He has a home run, 3 RBIs, hitting 667 and 6 at-bats versus Alec Marsh. So a couple of guys that neither team has seen much of. We know that Brian Wu, very, very good pitcher when he's on. Obviously still coming back from that injury. It'll be interesting to see kind of what he has to offer. especially after what we saw at the end of his last outing. I just hope that the Mariners can take this series and kind of keep that momentum going as they go back on the road, Joe.
Yeah, it is an off day on Thursday at the end of this series. So, sure, Kirby, Gilbert, you're hoping that they go long, but if you need to empty the pen on Wednesday to support Brian Wu, who, like, am I trusting him to go 5? There's going to be a pitch limit. The Royals don't strike out a ton. Like, he needs to play into soft contact, and hopefully the ball does not fall where the defenders aren't. Because if that's the case, it's going to be a long day for Brian Wu, or a short day, I guess. It would be a short day, because realistically, if he can't get outs, he's going to get chased out of that game, and the Mariners are going to have a long day with their bullpen, I guess, is more so the way that direction goes.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned it a little bit. The Mariners bullpen is going to come into play a lot in this series because, again, the Royals don't strike out. They put the ball in play. And that could, for someone like George Kirby, could be huge. Like an amazing advantage for him because they're going to put the ball in play. And if they can, hit a ground ball to shortstop every at bat, then I think that he'll be able to keep his pitch count down pretty low. But it really does rely on being able to make those plays and being able to keep the ball on the ground. I think that it's going to be very interesting to see kind of how the Mariners bullpen looks coming out of this series, Joe, especially with all of these injuries. But that is going to do it for us here on episode 86 of the Hit It Here podcast, presented by Bet Online. Thank you guys so much for watching the My Mom episode of the Hit It Here podcast. Shout out to all the moms out there. Happy Mother's Day, and go Mariners.